So I was trying to think of how the enlightenment actually developed our mind, or rather my mind, because there are a lot of philosophies which resonate a lot with the current climate of how people are making decisions today, as well as that there are lots of people who say that we utter the thoughts of dead philosophers, so that all the ideas that we've ever had were always based by a seed that someone used in the past. And because other people have been developing this past, it always has been there implicitly. So, for example, the idea of free will, we take that for well, not free will, I mean equality, and I mean equality of opportunity. We take it for granted right now that everyone should be equal because we are overly focused on the consequence of it. So politics, scientific equality, equality in the workspace, equality during conversations, and because we talk about these things so much, because that's what's being talked about in our culture, we just assume that it is true. But the truth is that how many years ago was it? Well, before the 1600s, there wasn't really any talk or speaking about equality, except for the Greeks. The Greeks were a special case. But for our culture, the West, the equality thing is relatively new and mostly popularized by people like John Locke. And essentially, he was a political philosopher and made a lot of efforts into making England in the 1688, around that, before that, but he was trying to get rid of the monarchy and get the state separated from the church, because it will lead to a certain amount of tyranny, and we wouldn't be able to develop as much as we could because we don't allow other religions in our atmosphere. So maybe the other religions come up with a brilliant idea. We wouldn't even consider that because they have a different religion. That is if the church is still at power. And I mostly am wondering how, well, firstly, how I came up with the ideas. Well, how these ideas came up into my own mind. Because I agree, people should be free, but I have no idea where it comes from. And the other question that I have in mind is, for how did the idea travel from Locke to me seeing those ideas today? The idea of freedom, well, my idea of freedom has really changed a lot throughout the years. For example, when I was a child, I was overly anxious, and I believed that I was not allowed to speak up against people because I would hurt their feelings. Of course, when you're constantly trying to not hurt other people's feelings, that is at the expense of your own feelings. Because the chances that you and another person always want the same things, it's virtually zero. So at times you really have to say like, okay, I want this, even though the other person doesn't want that at all. You have to negotiate with the chance of hurting their feelings. Of another example, you notice your friend being extremely, no, not, I was going to say extremely depressed, but that your friend is doing something terrible. For example, he's blackmailing someone on social media. of course, you have to send that person a message and tell them. Well, that is, if they would actually listen to you or read your text message in the first place. And now, because I never really spoke up, like my philosophy was that, like, other people are more important than me. And because I never spoke up about that, it deteriorated my soul, and I started suffering because I never got things that I want. So I would be extremely lonely because I was too afraid to approach other people because I would hurt their feelings perhaps or be a bit weird. Nor could I say when someone was being bullied or trying to make fun of me because I would make fun of their feelings. And right now, in hindsight, I can see how stupid that is. But the fact that I believed in it for so long shows me something from where ideas come from. Because I mainly learned it by myself by approaching my family. But the thing is with stuff like that is that when, like, the whole thought process of me not speaking up was essentially a strategy to avoid people getting mad at me or hurting me. And of course, it makes sense. Like, you stop the hurt. But because you always stop it, you don't see what is beyond it. So it was a limited strategy. Because at times you need to take that risk and just speak up, obviously. Now, after I learned that it wasn't really the best strategy, I started making up my own philosophy, and that was mainly by either writing books, no, reading books, writing a lot of, well, writing a lot in a diary, and YouTube shorts. So in YouTube shorts, I came across people like Jordan Peterson, David Goggins, Stoicism, and they had a huge influence on the way that I perceived equality. I would say the main one was this scene in the comic book where where the it's about samurais fighting each other, and this one main character, the samurai, faces another person, and they were essentially best friends. Even though they were best friends, they were just about to kill each other. Like, usually you would say that's kind of a contradiction, like, why would two friends try to kill each other? But those two people genuinely cared so much about each other that there was something that transcended death in a sense. Like, if, like, one person is going to die, but that is not that is beneath what we actually want to happen. Like, and it's something like testing who is the strongest or who is going to become the strongest and becoming stronger, essentially becoming a better person. And that idea really fascinated me and seemed to have a huge impact on how I perceive things around me. And you can love another person or be equal, which is not determined by something materialistic, because the whole base of materialistic is immortality. So if you die, there's nothing materialistic, something there is nothing that which is accessible to you, which is materialistic. So that is not the point. There has to be something beyond that. something that is more convincing than the material world or the things around us. Mm. Now, of course, I'm still trying to figure some things out when it comes to equality. Like, when should you actually speak up to someone? Especially when the other person has good intentions, but ruins a lot of people. One example is someone, like your child, playing around with the button of a nuke. Of course, you should get mad because the world will burn. But when does that happen in normal life? So, for example, when certain people believe that the best thing for you is to, well, for example, when you're a boxer, like your mother, your parents are going to worry, and they're definitely going to convince you to stay at home. Of course, when there are even people that will force you to stay at home because they don't want anything to happen to you. That's that is a problem that I'm talking about. Like their intentions are good. They want you to be healthy. But in this scenario, you should speak up for yourself and become mad because in well in this case I would say it's your soul is more important than your body in a sense. And what I mean by that is that even if you die, you know you died trying. And if you would stay at home, then you would be more dead than actually losing immortality. Because if you stay at home as a boxer, you're not doing what is meant for you. You're not doing the things that you want to do, and you're not becoming the person you could have become. And is that really something you want to happen? Like I can't see this before me. I can't see that person would rather die than to live the adventure of life. And of course, I agree there are people who commit suicides on a daily basis, but those people they are they think they are hopeless beyond belief or beyond saving. That's a better word for it. Now, the reason that I brought that idea up is because that I still do not know what equality entails. Or, well, equality and fairness, I'm using those two words interchangeably. Like, that's how much it has impacted me. But now I obviously am wondering, how did these Lockean ideas get towards me? And obviously it's the comic book for one. And then the question is, okay, how did Locke's idea get to the comic book? Of course, you have to know the author's beliefs and his intentions for writing the book. From what I know, the author was just interested in entertaining other people and teaching you how to live. So he definitely has good intentions, which he based on his own personal experience. And now, okay, his personal experience, it means that he has experienced these Lockean ideas. The obvious answer is going to be that in his country, democracy is still present. And because I know he's from Japan, I also know that the church is separate from the state. Especially since we've all become closer through one social media and another just through trading. We've have a really easy time exchanging ideas from one another. And especially in Japan, the West had a huge influence on the industrialization of the Japanese. Like, we brought the Enlightenment towards them, and then they just become a powerhouse in like what 100 years. I think it was like at the start of the 1900s, or maybe at the start of the 1800s. I don't know. But this industrialization of Japan was actually the introduction of these enlightened ideas. But even though they became more enlightened, they're still pretty communal today. And I'm not sure what that means exactly, but I've been told that the Japanese people were like the child I used to be, which is being extremely careful about dealing with other people and not immediately creating a fuss just because something happened. It's strange that the idea took a weird cycle with me. That instead of learning to buy or from the West, that these that I was introduced to them because a Japanese man taught of them. And these enlightened writers are becoming more and more popular in Japan itself. So it seems that they are blooming right now, or starting to bloom, especially the younger generations. And here in the West, well, at least I am over here in Belgium. I'm surrounded by people who are overly anxious about what other people are going to think, and overly obsessed with progress of the material world. And I think there might be some connection between the two, but because we've been focusing so much on the progress of science, we don't really care about psychology and all that other stuff. Like, we don't care about our well-being unless it is proven by science. And it's not easy to. I don't think that works because in order for you to prove something psychologically, you need to test it on a whole group of people for you to get anything out of it. Or you can make case studies, of course. But if you do not have the skills to study your own self, then you have to rely on the things, well, only on the things that you share with other people, which is not a smart idea because you're pretty different from all the people around you. So if you want one thing, then you can't really look up how to get it. You have to develop your own tools on how to get it because most people don't want to get the things in the combination you want to get them. It sounds really complicated, but it just comes down to you being interested in, for example, video games. And after you've played that video game, you become inspired to write your own book. And afterwards, you're inspired to change the world. While another person, they might play that video game and never turn it on again because they thought it was so terrible. So yeah, these those peculiarization, like those idiosyncrasies. I don't know how to pronounce it, But these individual differences, you can't really scientifically explore them because they are, per definition, individual to you. I have my own personal interests, and a lot of people don't seem to be interested in things that I am, or even understand them, especially when I try to explain a Christian what I think about their religion. Like, they don't know what I'm getting at. So these Lockean ideas, they're really widespread right now because they're applied in micro groups, microcosms. Let's use that word. I hear people throwing that around from time to time. But because people applied in certain dimensions, you start applying them as well as they seem to logically help you in a way. And when I came across Vagabonds, it immediately attracted me. I immediately felt an affinity towards it because it seemed to be a useful strategy or a useful way that I could live. And well, I think these whole applications at different groups and being attracted to you is essentially what the whole sociological structures comes down to. But there is just so many ways to group people that it's not easy to predict things because you have to choose, okay, which level is relevant. Of course, you can look at people who like to buy nail polish, for example. Is that something you're really interested in? Like, most people would say no, and I'm not interested in it either. So you have to look at the consequences of the actions of certain people and infer where it came from to see how it will extrapolate to the future. I imagine that predicting the future is not possible, but but you can choose one part of the future which you can predict, but it's just not part of the whole. Well, it's only part of the whole. It's not the whole picture because we only select the part that matter most to us. Like, the world is so complex. You don't know most of the things you're looking at or understand how they work. For example, I'm using this computer and this camera, but I have no understanding of the internal mechanisms of how this thing works, like how light is being detected and all that stuff. But we seem to extract the same things that other people are extracting out of certain applications. So out of the stories, I'm definitely not the only person who has been inspired by that. But it's also not precisely written there in exact words. Like, I saw the picture, other people saw the picture, and we. So yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon.